Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash, and of course I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now today you join me for another one of my Am I a Chap series, and it's another special. It is another watch edition, because I did one of these a few weeks ago. People really seemed to get on board with that one, and a few of you gentlemen graciously sent me images of your watches and have allowed me to tell your stories through the horological pieces which have shared your life. Now today I'm going to show you the wristwatches of a gentleman called Ron. Now Ron has been a stalwart supporter of this channel for many years, since the beginning, and it's my pleasure to go on a journey through his watch owning history. And actually the first watch he owned, I don't have an image to show you, because Ron tells me his watch journey began quite early, in late 1960, when his father bought him a Timex hand wind piece. He wore it everywhere. Unfortunately, on a camping trip in Cumberland, Kentucky, he forgot to take the watch off, went swimming and destroyed it. So, as often is the case, water is the enemy of the wristwatch. Some watches. However, his next wristwatch was one which had previously been owned by his maternal grandfather. It was in fact his grandfather's railroad watch, and he gave it to Ron a few years after he retired from the railroad in 1973, and he had his name and Ron's name engraved on the back, along with the year which he joined the railroad. And as you can imagine, a piece like that, you know, it's a lovely watch. It's fascinating to imagine that these watches were a necessity of the working day for people on professions like the railroad and so on. So a real splendid piece. It's got its own little sort of holder there, so the watch it doubles up as a clock as well as a watch. And I think that's absolutely glorious. It's a lovely watch, and what a piece of family history. So as Ron's life progresses, tragically, as often is the case, our parents predeceased us. And when Ron's father died, he took ownership of his father's Bova 23 jewel self-winding watch, had it cleaned and serviced, and started wearing it in the late 1980s. Now Bova is an American watch company founded in 1875 by Bohemian immigrant Joseph Bova, and it was sold to Citizen, the Japanese watch company, in 2007. But throughout its history, Bova developed something of a reputation for technological innovation and advancements, and for adapting to the changing needs of customers. And if you look at this watch, I mean, I think this is a classic gentleman's watch. It's exactly what I think of a watch from maybe a generation ago. Lovely strap. I like I don't know how you describe the dial of the watch, this Bova. Certainly got the sort of sword hands, indices and numerals every other on the dial. It's interesting, it's attractive. The sort of fluted, ridged finish on the dial itself attracts the eye. It's a classic watch. You could wear it today and it would absolutely look charming. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, now Ron's next watch follows in a trend, because it's also a Bova. And Ron tells us by the 1990s he was up for a change, and liking the Bova brand, he purchased himself a Bova Quartz dive watch. And as you can see from the image, this watch has had quite a life. He says he wore it as his everyday watch for many years, until he was drawn back to the mechanical winding watches of his youth. But the Bova watch looks smart. I love the way that, you know, the bezel has had such wear that the coloration, the paint of the bezel has worn away. I love to see that on a watch, because it means the owner has worn it, put it to its purpose, and it's just, you know, that patina brings the watch to life. Now, a little bit more about Bova. In the 1960s, the company was involved in a fierce rivalry with Omega watches, who, it would be fair to say, has probably come out on top now in the fullness of time. But way back then, you know, Omega was still on the up and up. And of course, they won the race to get their Speedmaster watch accepted as astronaut certified And as a consequence, every person who's walked on the face of the moon to this time has actually had on their wrist a Omega Speedmaster. However, all of those watches were owned by NASA. Hence, they are not private watches. They weren't owned by the astronauts themselves. A very interesting fact, and this is a bit of a claim to fame, which Bova have, which not a lot of people are aware. So, on board Apollo 15, the mission commander was a chap called David Scott, astronaut. And whilst on the mission, oh God, I'm trying to think of the name of it now. The glass, the crystal, popped off his Speedmaster, rendering it useless. So he actually wore his Bova chronograph, which he took as his own private watch, as a secondary watch. Presumably astronauts can take a few additional private possessions with them. So he took this, his Bova chronograph as his second watch, and on his second walk on the moon, David Scott wore his Bova to keep track of the time, thus making that Bova watch the only privately owned watch that has been worn on the lunar surface up to this point. So I think that's quite a claim to fame, actually. And yeah, Ron's watch shows all the signs, maybe of having been through the same trials as having walked on the moon, but it certainly looked like it's been worn and it's been loved, and that's what I love to see. Not long after that, 2005, Ron bought himself an Orient dive watch from eBay. Classic place to go for a watch. That's where you get your deals. It was his everyday watch for a number of years. And if we look at the watch, I mean, I love Orient. I think it's a really underrated brand which offers such an approachable price point for an excellent watch. Everybody looks at Seiko and they look at all of these other, if you're looking at the Japanese brands, Seiko, Citizen and so on. Orient flies a bit under, the radar, and I think it's a great watch. And Ron's watch here, it's a little bit of a Pepsi, isn't it? You've got a blue and a red dial. It's not really, though. It's not designed as a GMT watch. It's a dive watch, and the red bit indicates when you're in the last 10 minutes of air, presumably, if you set the bezel correctly when you're in the water. I love the sort of sunburst dial, giving that shimmer on the blue dial. It's glorious. It's a lovely watch. I love it. It's a day date. Again, signs of wear on the bezel show this watch has been loved. Now, Orient as a brand, they can trace their history back to 1901, so well over 100 years, where, and I'm going to read his name, Shiguro Yoshida opened a watch shop called Yoshida Watch Shop. Good name, in Tokyo, selling imported pocket watches. Eventually, he would grow to become very successful, and he began manufacturing wristwatches himself in 1934. Now, Orient, as we know it today, although it started with Yoshida, was actually formed in 1950 in the format that we recognize today. It is a wholly owned subsidiary brand of Seiko. So it shares a lot of the R&D and a lot of the technology is shared with the parent company Seiko, which makes it an even better deal because Seiko, more prestigious, more sort of cash clout. That means your Orient benefits from all of that advances and innovations, yet it's available at a cheaper price. Orient produce a wide range of watches in the modern world, everything from quartzes, solar powered, automatics and so on. All of their automatic pieces are in-house because they're from Seiko, their parent company. So yeah, a rare, beautiful watch. So he wore that one, and around 2015, Ron's company gave him a Seiko Eco Drive, or Eco Drive, which marked 15 years of service in his job. Now, I've only ever worked for one company for more than 15 years. I worked for one company for over 20 years. I never got a watch. I think that is something which is sadly lacking in the modern world. That trait of companies to recognize their employees' loyalty and dedication in the shape of a timepiece to mark the passing of time seems to have something which has gone by the wayside. But I'm glad to see that Ron got this Seiko Eco Drive or Eco Drive mechanical watch. Sorry, well, Eco watch, is it a mechanical? I'm not sure, but it is a lovely watch. Yeah, dark coloured dial, yellow metal finish, probably PVD I would imagine, but yeah, nice watch, day date. A little bit more stylish, a little bit more maybe classy, but very good. Seiko, of course, as we're talking about the histories of all of these watch companies, they were founded in 1881 by Kintaro Hattori, again in Tokyo, where all the best things happen in Japan by all accounts. It introduced the world's first quartz wristwatch in 1969. To the present day, they've grown and grown and grown. Right now, they employ more than 12,000 staff, and it is fair to say they dominate the Japanese watch world. It's best known, Seiko, for its wristwatches, even though they make a variety of other electronic items as well. Seiko and Rolex, now this is an interesting fact, you like this, they are the only two watch companies considered to be vertically integrated. Now what does that mean? That means they are able to design, develop and manufacture a watch from the ground up, from scratch. So they've got a design element, they've got a manufacturing house and everything in between, and all of the component parts for that watch they're able to make. Only two companies, Rolex and Seiko, have that ability. Everything is done in-house, and they're able to design them, make them, ship them, test them, inspect them, everything in-house. Very rare quality. Their mechanical watches, to the modern day, consist of approximately 200 parts, and the company has the technology to do everything. So there we go. Interesting fact. You didn't know that, possibly. So now Ron decides to buy his own watch, because you'll notice up to this point quite a few have come his way through relationships with family members and so on. But in 2018, getting a bit closer now, he decided to buy a Hamilton Jazzmaster, and it became his everyday watch. And now we're starting to look a bit more modern, a bit more classy. And if you look at this piece, it's a stainless steel finish, and it's got a white dial with indices at the 12, 6 and 9. And an interesting dial. There's some different sort of textures going on there. I don't know how you would describe the center piece of the dial, sort of, you know, guilloche finish of a sorts, but very attractive. The bracelet, again, draws the eye too. Now, Hamilton, of course, is a company which is a Swiss manufacturer today, were originally an American firm, and they sadly ended their American manufacturing element in 1969. Now they're all manufactured in Bienne in Switzerland, you know, and they are a lovely watch. Today they're owned by, or part of, the massive Swatch Group, because, you know, as things go on, watch companies, they go through mergers and acquisitions. They've all been swept up into one or two big conglomerates these days. So they are part of the Swatch Group, but they still have a very solid reputation, and this is a very lovely watch. I like it, one I could wear too. Very classy. Now, this is where Ron diverges into the world of micro brands, basically. And he was introduced by the Cincinnati Watch Company, which is his local watch company, in effect. And he bought their field watch, which he liked the look of, and here we see it. It's the Cincinnati, it's called a Cincinnati Centurion. It is a field watch. It is 40 millimeters in diameter. It costs $450 or 450 pounds, I believe, if you were to buy it here in the UK. It's got a Celita movement inside, so a Swiss movement, which provides you with 40 hours of power reserve. It's got a screw down crown, making it 100 meters of water resistant. So what do we know about this company? Well, a couple of chaps, I believe, set the company up from scratch, and in 2018 they launched the Cincinnati Watch Company, and I think this watch is quite classy. I like it, actually. I like it for a few reasons. 40 millimeters is a good size. I like the fact that it's got a nice, clear, easy to read dial. The hands, syringe hands, are obviously filled with luminescence, as I can see the hour markers, the numerals are. So this is a watch which you're going to be able to see in low light and intense light when you're outdoors because of the colour of the dial. It's got a lot of class to it. I like it a lot. I like the fact that the crown, screw down crown, doesn't have crown guards, making the watch a little sleeker. Yeah, I really like it. I've never heard of the Cincinnati Watch Company before, but they seem to produce a watch at an approachable price, which looks rather nice. And on that note, Ron has stayed loyal to that company, because approaching his retirement, he decided to buy a watch to commemorate that landmark moment in one's life where you achieve freedom for the second time. And he bought a Cincinnati watch, again, one of their pilot's watches, the P40. This watch commemorates the P40 plane from World War II, and it's a beautiful watch. I think you'll agree. Just look at it. It's got a honey-coloured dial. Again, nice large numerals as indices, which just makes it easy to see. It's got the date at the 6 o'clock marker. Hands again, sort of skeleton hands, but with a little bit of luminescence at the end, again making it nice and easy to see. Classy. It's 40.5 millimeters, so nice and, fairly not too large, but big enough. It's a pilot watch, and they are typically somewhat larger, so pilots can see the time easily. Got that Solita movement inside again, this time 38 hours power reserve. 50 meters of water resistance, this one. It's a pilot watch, it's not a dive watch. 530 British pounds. I like it. It's classy, it's elegant. I believe Ron added the stylish mesh bracelet himself, so presumably it comes with a leather band like the previous one. But that honey-coloured dial is unusual. Gold centre, obviously, but honey-coloured around the outside. You don't see it often, so it draws the eye. It's very lovely. So, and this is a watch which I've coveted for some time myself. After Ron's retirement, he was still pining for a Grail watch, a watch he'd fancied for years, but never decided to buy. Well, retirement is a turning point in one's life. We often make decisions that we've put off, and Ron did indeed buy himself his Grail watch, that being the Oris BigPointer date. And 6 months ago, he purchased this watch, bought it for the collection. These days they cost about £2,000. It's still in, and I think it always will be, in the Oris catalogue. And it's an absolute beauty, I think you'll agree. It's got everything going for it. Absolutely glorious. This is the red or burgundy dial option. And yeah, absolutely lovely. The thing that draws the eye, the pointer, obviously the big pointer. You will note that around the edges of the dial are the date, so 1 to 31 going all the way around the edge. And to indicate the date, rather than having a date window where the date clicks over, on this watch it has a hand, which, as you can see, has that red sort of pointer at the end, which clicks along and underlines the day that you're in as the month unfolds. It's an unusual way of designating the date to the wearer, but I think it's absolutely lovely. And it's different. Again, nice large numerals as indices to tell you the time. Cathedral hands, but nice. I do like watches which have a clear delineation between the dial and the indices. In other words, if the dial is a dark colour, I want to see the hour markers a nice light colour so I can see them. I think this may be something to do with the passing of time as I get older. I'm wearing a Rolex GMT Master 2 at the moment, and it has nice large indices with big solid dots of luminescence, so you can see what the time is, which is nice to see. Now, Oris has been around since 1904. They're one of the classic Swiss companies. They were founded in the Swiss town of Holstein, and the name Oris comes from a nearby brook, a small river which runs through that village. They initially started off manufacturing pocket watches. They're still a privately owned company, which is great to see. Now, the BigPointer date's been around since 1938. Hard to believe. It had an oversized crown, which means it could easily be operated by a pilot with gloves. That's normally the case. The large Arabic numerals, so time can be quickly read in the cockpit as well. Fluted bezel, as it still has, sort of machine turned. Central hand with pointer indicating the date. And in 2022, a new model featuring a 40mm case made from bronze was released, which has Oris's caliber 754 automatic movement. That is very classy. I really like that one. And finally, a few months ago, Ron, again, Grail watch for many people, he decided to track down a Gruen watch from the 1960s. Now, Gruen used to be a Cincinnati, Ohio watch company, which had a long and storied history. Started by a German immigrant into the US, made watches for over half a century with Swiss movements. Many innovations came from Gruen as the years went by, and it was a company which was at one time the largest watch manufacturer in the United States. It was in business from 1894 to 1958, based in Cincinnati, Ohio. But sadly, the company sold their interest. The family sold their interest in the company in 1953, and that led to a decline from which the company never recovered, and in 1958 the company was broken up and sold. So tragic. But one of the, and let's just reflect on the watch for a moment before I tell you an interesting fact about them. Now, Ron's watch is a 34mm gold-plated case, and I think it is mid-century beautiful in the classic gentleman style. You know, 12, 6 and 9 Arabic numerals, and the rest sort of baton hour markers, the date window at the 3 o'clock position, unguarded crown, small little crown, but so classic and elegant. This sort of watch and this particular watch will never go out of date in its appearance because they are timeless, timelessly elegant. Very, very beautiful. I think, you know, it stands its place in history as one of the better watch brands. Now, Gruen, it has a bit of a claim to fame. It can be called absolutely one of the first Bond watches, because a Gruen was seen on screen many times in the early James Bond films. In fact, a Gruen Precision 510 was rumoured to be the first watch worn on screen by James Bond himself, because Sean Connery wore the watch in the 1962 film Dr. No, and he also subsequently wore the watch in From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, You Only Live Twice and Diamonds Are Forever. So clearly a watch loved by Connery, and in fact the watch worn on screen by Connery in those movies is rumoured or supposed to be Sean Connery's personal watch, and he just happened to wear it and he wore it on screen. So a great claim to fame from a company now which has passed into the annals of history, but a beautiful watch, classically elegant. And Ron says he believes he has now reached the end of his watch collecting journey. Well, I hope not, Ron. I hope there are more pieces still out there which pique your interest and you will decide to follow into the future. Your watch collection is beautiful. Some obviously featuring the emotional attachment from now long gone family members, and others which mark passing moments in your life, you know, that you've had from work, when you achieved an anniversary with your former employer, when you retired from work and so on. I think these are great points of life to mark with a watch, and it's great you've even managed to hold on to some of those watches that you wore just as your daily beaters years ago. To see that patina and the wear on them, you know, makes me think of the days grinding through life where you wore those watches and they got the job done. Thank you so much for sharing your watch collection with me today, Ron, and the story of your life through the wristwatches that you wore. It is greatly appreciated. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this Am I a Chap watch edition. I've got a couple more of these coming up because some of you have sent your photos of your watches into me and have told me the stories behind them. Now, if any more of you would like to do that, please send your images, best possible definition, to the email address you see on the screen, and tell me your stories. And I would love to share them with all of us folks who get inspiration from the lives that other men have led and help us on our own journey. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, click the subscribe button. Leave me a comment in the comment section below. You can support the channel by buying me a coffee, or for a very small amount, you can become a patron. And my patrons get an additional video from me each week, and we got a bit of a personal sort of dialogue going on over there on the patron page. The links to all of these things are in the show notes below. So until the next time, after I've said, Ron, you are certainly a chap, sir, I will say, I'll see you again very soon. Take care.